I took my first deer on my second day in the woods. Less than 5 hours on stand and I'd bagged my first buck. Sounds easy, doesn't it? On that particular day, I would have said yes. But it took 11 years to get my second deer. 11 years of trying. Hi, I'm Monty Perrin with HowToHunt.com. I was really frustrated after that long dry spell. So to get past that frustration, I started telling myself after each hunt that I was one hunt closer to success. That attitude kept me in the woods. Staying in the woods gave me opportunities to learn. What I learned empowered me, and I eventually started filling tags. Nowadays, I'm not frustrated because I have a method that works for me. And the coolest thing about that method is it's transferable to you. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to zoom through the tactics that have empowered me and many others that I've shared them with. Just like myself, those hunters go to the woods with a plan. They know exactly what they're looking for, and they expect to succeed. Let's get started. Right now, I'm standing on a piece of God's creation that gives me the opportunity to relate to a lot of hunters. What makes that possible is the fact that I've never hunted here before. Most hunters start out on new ground. Now, I know there are exceptions like the hunter who starts out on the family farm or a family getaway that they literally grew up on. But most hunters start out on ground they are not familiar with, like a new hunt club or a new piece of ground they just got permission to hunt, or a new piece of public ground like what I'm standing on right now. Every year, I either become interested in or gain access to new land to hunt. And the first thing I want to do when I get that access is become familiar with the land and the deer that use that land. And that's exactly what I'm going to do on this piece of ground. But I'm not going to do it here. Instead, I'm going to do it here on my computer with the aid of Google Earth. In my early days, I remember wishing that I had the ability to survey a new block of woods from the air. In fact, I hunted with a friend who was a helicopter pilot, and we talked about the possibility of renting a chopper so we could get a bird's eye view of some of the land we had to hunt. Today, Google Earth makes it possible to get that aerial view and greatly shorten the time it takes to get familiar with a piece of ground. It's an amazing tool. Let me tell you how I use it. This is the area that I was standing in previously. Years ago, I would have started out scouting this area on foot, and I would have gathered a lot of information. But with this tool, I can concentrate my effort, save time, and be even better prepared. The first thing I'll do is look for contrast in the types of vegetation, and I particularly look for the thick stuff. For example, this looks like it could be a pine thicket, and that's where I will start when I go back into the woods to continue my scouting. But while I'm here, I can pick up more valuable info. Let's see. This looks like it could be some mature hardwoods here and here. Now, I've already zoomed out and confirmed that there are no nearby crop fields or any other obvious food sources. Armed with that info, I can accurately deduce that acorns are going to be the favored food for deer in these woods. Because of that, I'm going to be looking for the oaks in these areas. And I'm particularly interested in the white oaks and southern chestnut oaks that are close to the thicket. But I won't ignore any of the oak trees that I find. In fact, I'm going to take my binoculars and look for tiny acorns because it's July and there's a good chance they are already starting to form. Right here at my desk, I can locate obvious funnels like this one here. During daylight hours when I can legally hunt, deer are very likely to avoid these areas because of the homes and human activity. The lake cuts them off on this side, so there's a good possibility that their daily habits will funnel them through this block of woods right here. Now I can take my ruler tool, set it to yards, and measure the distance from the back of these homes to the lake. It's right at 300 yards. So now I'm empowered to narrow down my search when I go back into the woods and survey this area on foot. I'm a bow hunter, and because of that, I'll be looking for narrow funnels within this wide funnel that will allow me to get into bow range. For me, that's 30 yards or less. Once I've found those funnels, I'll be able to determine the wind direction I will need to overcome the deer's super sense of smell. In review, with the aid of Google Earth, I've been able to identify bedding thickets, potential feeding areas, funnels, and the wind direction I will need to be effective. All that in just a few minutes right here at my computer. To me, that's awesome info. Now let's get back into the field and fine-tune some things. Now we're back at that thicket we found on Google Earth. Those satellite pictures are 3 years old, so the first thing I want to do is make sure that the thicket is still thick. That's important to me because my method is what I call habitat-based. All living creatures have specific habitats that they thrive in. Deer thrive in thickets because they provide a sanctuary where they can safely hide from predators like me. Think about it. You're a deer, and all you want to do during the day is bed down so you can chew your cud and get some rest. And you want to do so without becoming the main course in some predator's daily menu. Your best option would be the thickest stuff around. I'm talking about briars and brambles and thick undergrowth, the kind of stuff that no hunter could easily get through even if they wanted to. That's exactly what I have behind me. And this kind of thick habitat is where I always start my scouting effort. Why? Because where I live, it's a given that deer are going to use this kind of habitat to bed in. In my part of the world, bedding cover consists of power line right-of-ways, old cut downs that are growing back, old home places that have been abandoned or becoming thick, storm blowdowns, and farm fields that have been allowed to grow back. In other parts of the world, it could be a river bottom or a laurel thicket or a CRP field. I know what to look for here in the south where I live, but if I lived in New Jersey, Kansas, or Michigan, I'd do the same thing. I'd start out looking for the bedding cover. Why? Because I believe deer are deer regardless of where they live, and they're going to act in predictable ways. Because of that, I feel like I can safely predict that deer are going to bed down in the thickest habitat available to them. That brings us full circle to this thicket behind me. I've already walked it and found several trails going in and out of it. I've confirmed deer tracks and deer activity, so I know they're using it. Now we're going to figure out what's going to get them out of there so that we can take a good, clean, ethical shot. All right, we found a bedding area and confirmed deer activity in and out of it. Now what we're going to do is look for the likely feeding areas in this block. Remember, we ruled out crop fields with Google Earth, so that only leaves us with the natural foods. Now, it's no secret that deer love acorns, so I'm going to concentrate my scouting effort on the oak trees that are in that block of hardwoods that we also located at my computer desk. Now, if there were crop fields around, I'd still be more excited about the available acorns. Why? Because I think the deer would be more excited about them. In that case, I would use the fact that they were feeding in those fields in their summer feeding patterns, and I would find their trails from those fields back to their bedding areas, looking for acorns along the way, and that's where I'd probably do my hunting. Now, I believe that the deer would probably end up in those crop fields, but I also believe there's a good chance they wouldn't do it during daylight hours when it's legal for me to take one of them. But that's a moot point here because we don't have crop fields in this area. I'm just sharing that because it's a strategy that I use when there are crop fields in the mix. Now, this area that I'm in right now, this spot, shows really good promise for several reasons. The first reason is because it's close to the bedding area, yet far enough away that I can get in here and have a chance of not bumping them. The second reason it's such a good area is because I have the existence of both white oak trees and southern chestnut oak trees. Now, when I have both of them, I know I have a good possibility of at least one of them dropping those acorns that those deer love. Now, I've taken my binoculars and I've confirmed that we've got some white oak acorns on the tree, and it looks like we're going to have a really good crop. So I'm really excited about this area and looking forward to getting back out here in the fall. All right, it's July and we're doing the legwork on a new piece of ground, so we'll be ready to hunt it this fall. So far, we've located a bedding area and confirmed deer activity around it. We've found some possible natural foods and confirmed their availability. The next thing we need to consider is how our deer are going to travel between the bedding and feeding areas. In hunting circles, the buzzword is the term funnel. And I got to admit, I knew how to use it in a sentence for years before I could proficiently locate one in the woods. The problem was I was overcomplicating things. A funnel is simply a feature in the landscape that narrows down the movement of deer to a specific area. It could be a path of least resistance, like a low bank, shallow creek crossing, or something that attracts, like those acorns that I'm excited about hunting around this fall. In the future, I'm going to do a video and go into greater depth on this subject, but for now, if we can start thinking in terms of paths of least resistance and attraction, that will have the biggest impact on our ability to become proficient at identifying funnels in the woods. I will add that taking up a bow and starting to bow hunt had the biggest impact on my ability to locate funnels. Why? Because it put me in a situation where I had to think about getting in close range of a deer. In order to do that, I had to start thinking about features in the landscape that would narrow down their movement to a particular spot. And that's the definition of a funnel. Now we're going to talk about what I believe to be the most important consideration when it comes to deer hunting. Because you can have the bedding area nailed down, you can know exactly what tree they're going to feed under, and you can know how they're going to travel from one to the other. But if you hunt with the wind against you, chances are you're not going to see a thing. Deer literally live and die by their sense of smell. Now there are a lot of products out there designed to help fool a deer's nose. I don't use any of them. I simply hunt with the wind in my favor. For example, if I was going to do an afternoon hunt in that block that we've been discussing in this video, then I would expect the deer to be laying in those bedding thickets during the daytime, get up in the afternoon and evening, and then go feed on those acorns. Because of that, I would only hunt there when the wind was blowing from the thicket to the acorns, so it would blow my scent away from their noses. Now here's what I see happen a lot of times. Hunters will come up to me and they'll say, "Monty, will you please help me figure out why I'm not seeing deer?" The first thing I ask them is, "Are you paying attention to the wind?" Many times they'll say, "I know about the wind." My response to that is, but are you letting what you know about the wind dictate your actions? You must pay attention to the wind. You must put it in your favor. I use weather.com, I drill down to their hourly forecasts, and I let that help me determine where I'm going to pick my stands. One other thing I do, I put a white string on all my weapons. That helps me know which way the wind's blowing, and it really comes into play when deer are in close proximity and I see a wind shift due to my string and I know I need to act a certain way because of what the wind's doing. But the important thing to remember here is that the wind, you can have everything right. You can know where they're going to end up and they can be coming every day. But you've got to hunt those stands with the wind in your favor. Okay, I could stop right now and you'd have enough information to go out and pick a good spot to ambush a deer this fall. Here's the formula. Let Google Earth save you some time and effort. Locate the bedding cover. Find the preferred foods. Identify the funnels between the two. And always hunt with the wind in your favor. But there's another thing to be considered, and that's the rut and rutting activity. This is where a lot of people start. But so far, this approach has been different in that we've only talked about something that deer do every day: bed and feed. I'm real confident you're going to see deer putting this system into practice. But you're also going to see rutting sign and rutting activity. And because of that, in order to get the most out of this, you need to become a detective. You need to pay close attention to the rubs and scrapes that you're bound to discover. You need to make special note of the deer activity and the rut behavior that you witness. You may find yourself out on your first tracking effort of the season and it may lead you into a block of woods that you're not familiar with. While you're there, pay attention, because you might just find another funnel. Put that in your memory bank. You might find a lot of acorns and a variety of deer sign. Remember that. Gather the information and then respond to the opportunity that it represents. This is the way that you tweak this system and get the most out of it. All right, let's wrap this up. My goal when I started this was to put out enough information that you could go out and have some success this fall. This is not exhaustive. I could add something to every one of these points, and I could even add additional points. But those are other videos that will be coming out in the future. But as a wrap up, here's the system. Use Google Earth to save you time and effort. Locate the bedding cover. Locate the preferred foods that are available. Find the funnels that connect the two. Hunt with the wind in your favor. Become a detective and react to what you find and adapt to the circumstances. This is the way you tweak the system and get the most out of it. This is Monty Perrin with HowToHunt.com. Get after 'em.